Hi, Jen with AstroT. So tonight we are getting ready to celebrate because tonight is the winter solstice. So what is the winter solstice? That is the longest night of the year. So the most darkness and the least amount of day or light. So this is a turning point in the year because it is when all of a sudden the days are going to start getting a little bit longer, the sun's going to get a little bit higher in the sky. So the winter solstice, the winter solstice happens when the sun moves into the sign of Capricorn. And it is actually when the earth itself is tilted furthest away from the sun. And the sun is actually directly over the Tropic of Capricorn. So again, it's the turning point. It's where we welcome the sun and we look forward to the sun and the coming of the sun and the coming of the light, bringing the light of the world. So there are lots of things and different ways to celebrate throughout history, and we're going to talk about all of those. So we have Saturnalia, we have Yule, we have Christmas, of course, and of course just regular, the winter solstice. So first thing we're going to talk about is Saturnalia. So this goes way back, and it's a ancient Roman holiday where they celebrated Saturn. And Saturn, of course, is the ruler of Capricorn. We know that. And Saturn is the god of agriculture. So they would celebrate. First it started as a day, and then they needed just a little more party time, so they extended it to 7 days long. So this was just 7 days of just upending norms and having things just completely opposite almost. So of course, just like with holidays that we see nowadays, they bring in and they use a lot of those earthly things like evergreens and pine cones and just all natural. But it was a time of drinking and festivities and having big feasts. It's a time when all businesses would close for the whole 7 days, and the masters would release their servants and let them just come and eat at their tables, and they would even serve them and treat them like equals, give them gifts. A lot of gifts that were exchanged during Saturnalia was little terracotta figures, they would exchange candles, oil lamps, a lot of things just representing that coming of the light or coming of the sun. So, and Saturnalia, it was just a great time for everybody. And so how would this look nowadays? So here's a fun story of how you could kind of bring a little bit of the past into the present. So years and years ago at my job, I work at a black car service, which is also a limousine service. So in the old days when we were a small company, the owner of the company at Christmas time would load up the limousine with the chauffeurs and the office staff and actually drive them to the Christmas party. So if you kind of look at it that way, it was like how the owner or the masters would serve their slaves or employees. Not that we're slaves, well, sometimes it might seem like that, but of course he doesn't do it anymore because we're now a really big company, so it would have to be a pretty big limo. But still you can see how you could actually bring those old traditions and make them current traditions. So moving on, the next one we want to talk about is Yule. So Yule is a Norse or a Germanic festival, and that lasted 12 days. So they said this 7-day stuff, that is not enough, we're going to extend it. So Yule brought in all the things that have to do with nature, and that is, if you look down here at the table I have, and I'm going to explain all this, but we have the Yule log and we have just all the natural elements, candles, things like that. So this is all, Yule is about nature, and anything Wicca related or pagan related, it's about just being one with nature and bringing nature in and just using it and being thankful for it. One of the traditions that they did during the Yule season was the Yule log. So I have my Yule log here and I have it decorated, and they would decorate it, but they would cut off a giant log. And with that giant log, they would decorate it and they would put it in their big hearse, because back then the hearse were so large enough that you could just put a giant log in. Now this log was to burn for the entire 12 days of the Yule season. So as each day would go by, they would push the log further and further in and just hope that it would last, because it not only provided warmth, it provided light, so there wasn't electricity back then, of course, and it also provided, you know, the fire to cook by, to keep warm by. And so it just was really in the hearth of the home. So really just the central area of the home. And they would decorate it just like we have here with fruits and greenery that's brought in from the outside. Now, people actually started during Yule to bring in Yule trees, and they would decorate the Yule trees for the festivity. And what does that remind you of? So you can see how things just, they all are about worshiping the welcoming of the sun and what the earth has to offer. So one other thing, we have our little friend here, and this is our Yule goat. So interesting little story about our little friend goat here. So this goes back to the Norse tradition where the god Thor he had a chariot, and it was led by 2 goats. And every night he would slaughter those 2 goats and then eat them, and then the next morning they would come back. So of course we're not gonna slaughter our sweet little goat here, but that's just the Norse tradition. And who doesn't wanna, you know, you have this as like a remembrance of Thor and a sacrifice for Thor. And they did used to actually sacrifice goats for Thor. Now, you know, we all like to sacrifice a little bit for Thor, you know what I'm saying? So, but we're not gonna sacrifice our little goat here. So then we move along to Christmas. So look at Christmas and the way it is. You know, a lot of people will say, you know, oh, if you do these pagan rituals or this or that or astrology, that's all, you know, evil stuff. And, you know, but it's actually not, because if you think about what they're worshiping, it's kind of the same thing, because Christmas, what are you worshiping? You're worshiping the sun. You're worshiping the coming of the light of the world. So they picked one of the time where you're, you know, looking forward to the light coming, and that's what they made. You know, people didn't know the birth of Christ, so that's what they made the birth of Christ. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a historian, but just seems like it's just fitting. And if you think of all the traditions, they have the trees, just like the Yule trees. They have the greenery, because everyone decorates with, you know, all the wreaths and pine cones and the dried fruits and all that. So let's talk about some fun little things that you can do through the holidays. So if you look here, we have our altar set up. So when you're having a Yule altar, what you're gonna want is all the earth elements. So of course you wanna have your greenery present for the season. You have the white candle, and that represents the coming of the light. I also have these dried fruits here, and I have a pomegranate, which is because I think they're beautiful. And these dried fruits, what's great is if you have a pellet stove, throw some in front of it, and they dry in a couple days. And if you have cats that like to get into everything, they don't go anywhere near them. So kind of a miracle thing, because I know if you guys watch the channel, cats are kind of all over the place. Do you see them? Nope. So very handy. So if you have cats, dry some fruit, leave it all over the place. Anyway, so the things that you want to have represented on your Yule table is whatever makes you feel like good. So now all of this stuff makes me feel good, and I think it's just so appealing to the eye that I love the way it looks. So we have these natural nuts just representing the nourishment that comes from the earth. Again, we have all of our elements always. So we have up here pointing towards the north, we have our stone, which it represents the earth, and I have my bell here that has my my pentagram on it. Then I have over here my air, and that's represented by my feather and my sword. Of course, down here I have my wand, which represents fire. And then over here I have, and I had it filled with snow earlier, but when you have it totally full of snow and the snow melts, that's all you have left. So this is my water feature. You want to use nice outside water because you want to take from the outside and then give back to the outside. So we'll talk about some fun little things you can do too. So you have your altar here. What you can do, and what my husband and I are going to do tomorrow actually, is, so you want to take a pine cone, for instance, and you take your little pieces of paper. You want to write down your intentions for the year. And what does that remind you of? Kind of like a New Year's resolution. So you want to take that and you want to focus on what you want to, where you want to move, because the sun is our sole purpose, and this is the coming of the sun. So our sole purpose, what do we want to move towards? What is our goals for this next year? So those you want to write down, and then you also want to write down what you want to get rid of. What is holding you back? What is no longer useful to you? So you want to write those down as well. You fold up your little papers, stick them in your little pine cones here, and then, say your whatever you want to say, whatever feels good, whatever feels natural. Say, like, I'm going to release you and I'm going to work towards you, and whatever just makes you feel good. And then you're going to take your little pine cone here and you're going to toss it right into the fire. But you want to do this safely, of course, because you don't want to be doing this inside. If you just have, nothing. You want to either have a nice fireplace that you can throw it into, or you want to have a fire pit, which we're going to use our fire pit outside, and we're just going to throw our pine cones in there. It's been snowing today, like I said, that's where I got the snow from, so hopefully we'll be able to get a fire going. So that is a fun little ritual you can have to just really focus and really just think about where you want to be. What is your soul's purpose this year or for the rest of your life? Because it's a new day. Just like the new year, you're starting anew. Just like with the sun coming back from its darkness, we're coming back. We're coming out, and how do we want to move forward in our lives? So a couple other things I want to do for the season is, so I made these, they're witch bells, and you can hang them on your door handles, or you can hang them, somewhere where they're protective, and they show protection and good luck for whoever I give them to. So I made these for my kids, and if you guys are watching, just forget about that, because we'll just pretend you don't know until Christmas. And another funny thing, a little story, so my son just found out that he's 0.4% Nordic. So, come on, you gotta get a Yule goat. So we have, again, everything represented here. We have our little Mother Gaia. And so what we want to do is, when you come down to actually do your ritual, you want to light your candles. Now, these are the candles of this season. We have gold. This gold's kind of washed out. Then we have red, green, and white. White, of course, representing the coming of the light. And these are those earthy tones. So you want to light your candles. You want to really focus on your intentions and write them down, and then get rid of them. When you do burn the ashes, if you don't have a place to put your pine cones, take your papers and you can burn them, and then maybe throw them right in your water feature. Dump them outside in a garden and watch them rejuvenate for the coming year. Also great, always have your simmer pot going with all the flavors and smells of the season, with some cinnamon. And lastly, you want to say a cheers to everyone. When you have all your friends and family over, you want to say a cheers with some wassail, which is that fruity, yummy concoction that is from Saturnalia, and a tradition of the pagans and Yule, and which is made with apple cider, orange juice, cinnamon sticks, and a couple other things. And you can even put star anise in, but don't tell your husband if he hates it as much as mine does. But I might stick a little bit in there. And then whatever kind of booze you want, if you want to have a little bit of rum in there, whatever goes with it. I don't know. I'm not a big alcohol pairer person, or a bartender, but someone will figure it out for you, and it'll be delicious. So cheers, y'all. Have a great holiday, and we'll see you soon. Bye.